leaving his short-cut hair tousled. "Would you wear it?" he asked me. "Me?" I was astonished. "When the enemy attack," he said, "they'll expect to find me here. And if I'm not here, they'll suspect a trap." He smiled. "I'd ask Sagramore, but his face is somewhat more distinctive than yours, Lord Derville. You'll have to cut off some of that long hair, though." My fair hair showing beneath the helmet's rim would be a sure sign I was not Arthur. "And maybe trim the beard a little," he added. I took the armour from Higwith, and was shocked by its weight. "I should be honoured," I said. "It is heavy," he warned me. "You'll get hot, and you can't see to your sides when you're wearing the helmet, so you'll need 2 good men to flank you." He sensed my hesitation. "Should I ask someone else to wear it?" No, Lord," I said. "I'll wear it." "It'll mean danger," he warned me. "I wasn't expecting a safe day, Lord," I answered. "I shall leave you the banners," he said. "When Gorfithid comes, he must be convinced that all his enemies are in one place. It will be a hard fight, Derville." "Galahad will bring help," I assured him. He took my breastplate and shield, gave me his own brighter shield and white cloak, then turned and grasped Clamray's bridle. "That," he told me once he had been helped into the saddle, "was the easy part of the day." He beckoned to Sagramore, then spoke to both of us. "The enemy will be here by noon. Do what you can to make ready. Then fight as you have never fought before. If I see you again, then we shall be victorious. If not, then I thank you, salute you, and will wait to feast with you in the other world." He shouted for his men to mount up, then rode north, and we waited for the real battle to begin. The scale armour was appallingly heavy, bearing down on my shoulders like the water yokes women carry to their houses each morning. Even lifting my sword arm was hard, though it became easier when I cinched my sword belt tight around the iron scales, and so took the suit's lower weight away from my shoulders. Nimue, her spell of concealment finished, cut my hair with a knife. She burned all the loose hair lest an enemy should find the scraps and work an enchantment, and then I used Arthur's shield as a mirror to hack my long beard short enough so that it would be concealed behind the helmet's deep cheek pieces. Then I pulled the helmet on, forcing its leather padding over my skull and tugging it down until it enclosed my head like a shell. My voice seemed muffled, despite the perforations over the ears in the shining metal. I hefted the heavy shield, let Nimue fasten the mud-spattered white cloak around my shoulders. Then I tried to get used to the armour's awkward weight. I made Issa fight me with a spear shaft as a single stick, and found myself much slower than usual. "Fear will quicken you, Lord," Issa said, when he had rounded my guard for the 10th time and whacked me an echoing blow on the head. "Don't knock the plume off," I said. Secretly, I was wishing I had never accepted the heavy armour. It was horseman's gear, designed to add weight and awe to a mounted man who had to batter his way through the enemy's ranks. But we spearmen depended on agility and quickness when we were not locked shoulder to shoulder in the shield wall. "But you look wonderful, Lord," Issa told me admiringly. "I'll be a wonderful-looking corpse if you don't guard my flank," I told him. "It's like fighting inside a bucket." I tugged the helmet off, relieved when its constricting pressure was gone from my skull. "When I first saw this armour," I told Issa, "I wanted it more than anything in the world. Now I'd give it away for a decent leather breastplate." "You'll be all right, Lord," he told me with a grin. We had work to do. The women and children abandoned by Valerin's defeated men had to be driven south, away from the Vale. Then we prepared defences close to the remnants of the tree fence. Sagramore feared that the overwhelming weight of the enemy could drive us clear out of the Vale before Arthur's horsemen arrived to our rescue, and so he prepared the ground as best he could. My men wanted to sleep, but instead we dug a shallow ditch across the Vale. The ditch was nowhere near deep enough to stop a man, but it would force the attacking spearmen to break step and maybe stumble as they closed on our spear line. The tree barricade lay just behind the ditch and marked the southern limit to which we could retreat, and the place we must defend to the death. Sagramor anchored the felled trees with some of Valerin's abandoned spears that he ordered driven deep into the earth to make a hedge of angled spear points inside the pine branches. We left the gap where the road ran through the centre of the fence so we could retreat behind the fragile barrier before we defended it. My worry was the steep and open hillside, down which my men had attacked in the dawn. Gorfithid's warriors would doubtless attack straight up the vale, but his levies would probably be sent to the high ground to threaten our left flank, and Sagramor could spare no more men to hold that high ground. But Nimue insisted there was no need. She took 10 of the captured spears, and then, with the help of a half-dozen of my men, she cut the heads from 10 of Valerin's dead spearmen, and carried the spears and bloody heads up the hill, where she had the spear shafts driven butt first into the ground. Then she rammed the bloody heads onto the spear's iron points, and draped the dead heads with ghastly wigs of knotted grass, each knot an enchantment, before scattering branches of yew between the widely spaced posts. She had made a ghost fence, a line of human scarecrows imbued with charms and spells that no man would dare pass without a druid's help. Sagramor wanted her to make another such fence on the ground north of the ford, but Nimue refused. "Their warriors will come with druids," she explained, "and a ghost fence is laughable to a druid, but the levy won't have a druid." She had fetched an armful of vervain down from the hill, and now she distributed its small purple flowers among the spearmen, who all knew that vervain gave protection in battle. She pushed a whole sprig inside my armour. The Christians gathered to say their prayers, while we pagans sought the gods' help. Men tossed coins into the river, then brought out their talismans for Nimue to touch. Most carried a hare's foot, but some brought her elf bolts or snake stones. Elf bolts were tiny flint arrowheads shot by the spirits and much prized by soldiers, while snake stones had bright colours that Nimue enriched by dipping the stones in the river before touching them to her good eye. I pressed the scale armour until I could feel Kynwyn's brooch pricking against my chest. Then I knelt and kissed the earth. I kept my forehead on the damp ground as I beseeched Mithras to give me strength, courage, and, if it was his will, a good death. Some of our men were drinking the mead we had discovered in the village, but I drank nothing but water. We ate the food Valerin's men had thought would be their breakfast, and afterwards a group of spearmen helped Nimue catch toads and shrews that she killed and placed on the road beyond the ford to give the approaching enemy ill omens. Then we sharpened our weapons again, and waited. Sagramor had found a man hiding in the woods behind the village. The man was a shepherd, and Sagramor questioned him about the local countryside, and learned there was a second ford upstream, where the enemy could outflank us if we tried to defend the riverbank at the vale's northern end. The second ford's existence did not trouble us now, but we needed to remember that it existed, for it gave the enemy a way of outflanking our northernmost defence line. I was nervous of the coming fight, but Nimue seemed unafraid. "I have nothing to fear," she told me. "I've taken the 3 wounds, so what can hurt me?" She was sitting beside me, close to the ford at the vale's northern end. This would be our first defence line, the place where we would begin the slow retreat that would suck the enemy into the vale and Arthur's trap. "Besides," she added, "I'm under Merlin's protection." "Does he know we're here?" I asked her. She paused, then nodded. "He knows." "Will he come?" She frowned as though my question was crass. "He will do," she said slowly, "whatever he needs to do." "Then he will come," I said in fervent hope. Nimue shook her head impatiently. "Merlin cares only for Britain. He believes Arthur could help restore the knowledge of Britain.
But if he decides that Gofethid would do it better, then believe me, Derval, Merlin will side with Gofethid.
Merlin had hinted as much to me at Caer-Seuss, but I still found it hard to believe that his ambitions were so far from my own allegiances and hopes. "What about you?" I asked Nimue.
"I have one burden that ties me to this army," she said, "and after that I shall be free to help Merlin."
"Gunlius," I said. She nodded.
"Give me Gunlius alive, Derval," she said, looking into my eyes. "Give him to me alive. I beg you."
She touched the leather eye patch and went silent as she summoned her energy for the revenge she craved. Her face was still bone-pale, and her black hair hung lank against her cheeks. The softness she had revealed at Lunacer had been replaced by a chill bleakness that made me think I would never understand her. I loved her, not as I believed I loved Kynwyn, but as a man can love a fine wild creature, an eagle or a wildcat, for I knew I would never comprehend her life or dreams. She grimaced suddenly.
"I shall make Gunlius's soul scream through the rest of time," she said softly. "I shall send it through the abyss into nothingness. But he will never reach nothingness, Derval. He will always suffer on its edge, screaming."
I shuddered for Gunlius. A shout made me look across the river. 6 horsemen were galloping towards us. Our shield walls stood and thrust their arms into their shield loops. But then I saw the leading man was Morfans. He rode desperately, kicking at his tired, sweat-whitened horse, and I feared those 6 men were all that remained of Arthur's troop. The horses splashed through the ford as Sagramor and I went forward. Morfans reined in on the riverbank.
2 miles away, he panted. "Arthur sent us to help you. Gods, there are hundreds of the bastards."
He wiped sweat off his forehead, then grinned.
"There's plunder enough for 1,000 of us."
He slid heavily from his horse, and I saw he was carrying the silver horn, and guessed he would use it to summon Arthur when the moment was right. "Where is Arthur?" Sagramor asked.
"Safely hid,"
Morfans assured us. Then looked at my armour, and his ugly face split into a lopsided grin.
"Weighs you down, that armour, doesn't it?"
"How does he ever fight in it?" I asked.
"Very well, Derval, very well. And so will you."
He clapped my shoulder.
"Any news from Galahad?"
"None."
"Agricola won't let us fight alone. Whatever that Christian king and his gutless son might want,"
Morfans said. Then he led his 5 horsemen back through the shield wall.
"Give us a few minutes to rest the horses," he called.
Sagramor pulled his helmet over his head. The Numidian wore a coat of mail, a black cloak and tall boots. His iron helmet was painted black with pitch and rose to a sharp point that gave it an exotic appearance. Usually he fought on horseback, but he showed no regret at being an infantryman this day. Nor did he display any nervousness as he prowled long-legged up and down our shield wall and growled encouragement to his men. I pulled Arthur's stifling helmet over my head and buckled its strap under my chin. Then, arrayed as my lord, I also walked along the line of spears and warned my men that the fight would be hard, but victory certain, so long as our shield wall held. It was a perilously thin wall, in some places just 3 men deep, but those in the wall were all good men. One of them stepped out of the line as I approached the place where Sagramor's spearmen bordered mine.
"Remember me, lord?"
he called. I thought for a moment he had mistaken me for Arthur, and I pulled the hinged cheek-pieces aside so he could see my face. Then at last I recognized him. It was Griffith, Owain's captain, and the man who had tried to kill me at Lindinnis before Nimue intervened to save my life. "Griffith ap Annan," I greeted him. "There's bad blood between us, lord," he said, and fell to his knees. "Forgive me,"